prepare, right? Sometimes it feels like you absolutely have to go and do this next stage, as fast as possible. You get a lot of pressure. People don't want to give you long exclusivity stages, especially with brokers. But if you don't prepare, upfront, and you don't delay it just a little bit, you will most certainly delay your deal completion down the line, because there are always surprises. That's one. And two, recognize what are some of the things that you can compromise on and what are some of the things that you absolutely cannot. Having the right board, having the right support before you go into spending money, having exclusivity before you commit time and spend money, not agreeing to deal terms that you cannot accept because they can impact your deal success later down the line. Those are all the things, in my opinion, that warrant walking away from the deal if you don't get to a state that you are comfortable with, and you need to recognize those. When I started every new stage in the search fund journey, I made it a strategy of mine almost, and I think strategy that everybody advises to searchers, to speak with as many people who have gone through that stage as possible and capture best practices and try to learn from somebody else's mistakes, not your own. So maybe I'll just mention a few things that were very important to remember. When people think about deal making, they often think about due diligence. That's the first thing that comes to mind. And of course, this is a very big piece of work: commercial due diligence, operational due diligence in my case, because it was a manufacturing business, so a lot of operational issues had to be uncovered. Financial due diligence, tax due diligence, legal due diligence, that in itself is a huge piece of work. But if you look at the whole time frame, that piece of work took about 5 weeks out of, just counting quickly, about 20 weeks in total, for this deal to be completed. So, planning only for the first 5 weeks simply isn't enough. You need to think ahead of time about all of the other items, because those other items take a long time. For example, debt financing. When I started talking to my investors at the beginning of my due diligence process, they already asked whether I had first offers from the banks, and I haven't. I was new to the Polish market, I didn't have many contacts, so I felt like I was already late on the debt financing stage. In some of the first conversations, they asked me whether I already had the board, and I haven't yet quite convinced myself that I want to buy this company, let alone, who should be on my board. So they started asking all of these questions, and at that point I realized that having a really, really thorough, detailed plan, which says exactly which streams there will be, exactly what are the interdependencies, who is responsible for what at what stage, is it the lawyers or is it me? Is it the investors or is it me? Putting together all of those milestones is very important. And maybe just very quickly, I'll mention what those milestones were for me, so that people can hopefully get something practical from this conversation. So first of all, I needed to decide on acquisition structure and place of incorporation. I was running my search from Spain. I was making acquisition in Poland. Poland is still a pretty immature market when search funds are concerned. So to date, most of the search funds in Poland were incorporating in Luxembourg and buying in Poland. So the question was, do I want to do the same? Do I want to keep my Spanish structure, or do I actually want to start with a Polish structure and uncover, something that potentially can be helpful for future searchers? In the end, I decided on the Polish structure, so actually deciding what format should that company take, what are the tax implications for international investors. There are many really meaty questions that you need a lot of advice on, so it's a bulky piece that you should start on as soon as you can, because you don't want to tell your sellers that you can't buy because you don't have a company to buy it with. Then there is a point on SIM and DD findings. After your DD streams come together, you need to send an information memorandum to your investors with the DD findings, and you need to give them time. In my time frame, it was about 4 weeks to think about it, ask questions, have meetings with you in order to make up their mind on whether they want to invest and how much. During that time, I also plan target visits because I've heard from a few different searchers that they were surprised when at the end, after all of the investor meetings and presentations, the investor asked to visit the company. It wasn't in the plan. It delayed the whole deal by 3 or 4 weeks. It was a surprise to the sellers. It created a bit of uncomfortable dynamics. So I wanted to be proactive here, and I had, I think, 4 or 5 of my investors visit the company from abroad, which was really, really helpful, not only for me and for them, but also for the seller, because the seller could see all of the maturity and experience that was sitting behind me. Then, of course, there is the PRN, the preemptive right notice, the official step that you need to take in order for the investors to come back to you with the exact amount they want to commit to your deal. There's typically a number of days you need to wait for an answer. So again, you can't send it last minute. You need to know exactly when it's going. And more important even, you need to tell your investors many days ahead, many times, that this PRN is coming, because people need to be in the action mode to respond immediately when that message goes out. SHA, shareholder agreement. Typically at the time of PRN, you need to already have a term sheet agreed with the investors, so not the whole SHA, but a couple of pages with key terms, because they cannot commit funds unless they know on what terms they're investing. So there is substantial time required for that purpose. And nobody responds to a PRN if they don't know who sits on the board. So many days ahead. In my case, at the time when people were responding to this 1, 2, 3 scoring, I identified people who were really helpful on that deal, who would match what I need on this deal. And we undertook, a series of dating-like meetings to suss each other out. And finally, I had to pop a question on, would you like to be on my board? It was a very interesting experience, but I got a fantastic board as a result of that. And that also helped my equity commitments, because people feel much more comfortable if they know that you have a strong board on your side. Then there is putting together all of the holdco structure that you decided on before, and forming commitments for the equity gap, if equity gap exists. Because let's remember that in your PRNs, it may be that you actually get a pretty substantive equity gap, and you don't quite know how much time it will take to close it. So you need to work on it much in advance by contacting all of the investors to make sure you have a lineup in case equity gap occurs. Then there is this nice little line of SPA, so sale purchase agreement, which you need to negotiate with the sellers. In my case, there was also transaction insurance, which I advise to everybody, because it's, especially on bigger deals, because it takes away a lot of pressure from negotiating sales agreements. The transaction insurance is something that guarantees very small liability to the sellers for reps and warranties. And that basically means that they don't have to negotiate every single word on the sales agreement, as strongly as they would have if they had to pay, all of this liability from their own pocket. And then closing prep, all of the notarial acts, all of the paperwork, all of the final sort of debt facility mobilization, and making sure that you have the money on your account, transfers to various jurisdictions, from abroad, the capital calls. So all in all, as I read it, you can appreciate how complex managing that particular field is at the time when you need to make all of those different parties happy and make sure that your seller is still convinced, doesn't have the deal fatigue. And throughout this whole process, when you don't even know whether you have the funds yet to close the acquisition, you still have the poker face to capture the confidence of the sellers and make sure that they're still with you when you want to pull the trigger and actually buy this thing. I met the owners, and honestly, the moment I met the owners, I felt that there was something special in that meeting. Now, looking back, even the owners tell me that in that meeting they made a decision to sell to me if my offer was good enough, if it was a competing one. I just felt that the organizational culture that they built around the business, the way they spoke about their goals, their people, their processes, their innovation, was something that I can find myself well in. On top of it, of course, it helped that the business was growing 24% year on year, that it had very high 30% EBITDA margin, that it had a very recurring customer base and they were not losing any customers. There were pieces in this business that just spoke to the high quality of a business it was, and that combined with the rapport that we built with the owners was just the perfect mix for me to decide to actually go for it.